Hey guys, so today we're gonna deal with a very interesting topic, that is the ear. Now, many of you keep this topic as an option because it seems very difficult and complicated, but once you understand the basic structures and the anatomy of the ear, this topic is very interesting and simple. So, just moving ahead with this topic, as you can see, the ear is placed in the cavity of the temporal bone of the skull. So this is the ear, you can observe very much clearly, and surrounding the ear there is a cavity of a bone, or there is a portion of the bone you are observing. Now this bone is nothing but the temporal bone. So why a tall ear needs protection? Because ear consists of very delicate structures, and to protect this delicate structures around, it has a cavity, and that cavity is made up of the temporal bone. Easy? Okay. So the ear is divided into three basic divisions. One is the external ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear. Very simple and the logical divisions. The outermost part is the external ear, the middle portion is the middle ear, and the innermost portion is the inner ear. Okay. So how does this all of the three parts in the ear look like? What is external ear, what is middle ear, and what is inner ear? Let us just understand with the help of this very simple diagram. Now be very attentive with this diagram, because this diagram is going to stay with us throughout the ear. Okay, so the outermost portion of the ear, which is starting with the pinna, that is the only visible portion of the ear very clearly for us. Okay, and now from the pinna you will observe there is a narrow canal which is extending down inside, and then it is leading to a partition or a septum like thing, right? So this entire portion, that is the pinna, the external auditory canal, the pinna, the external auditory canal, and this septum, that is your tympanic membrane, all together they comprise the external ear. Okay, now moving ahead, behind this tympanic membrane you will observe there is a narrow canal or a cavity. This narrow cavity is nothing but your middle ear, and further when you go inside you will observe there is a snail shaped beautiful shaped structure, and that is nothing but constituting your inner ear. Okay, so the ear is comprising of your external ear, then it is comprising the middle ear, and then it is considering your inner ear also. Further from the inner ear you will observe there is a nerve which is extending, and this will lead to your auditory cortex, area number 14 in the brain. Okay, so these are the three important divisions of the ear: external, middle, and the inner ear. Now let us consider into details that which portion of the ear is called as what. Okay, so the outermost part we are already introduced to it, that is nothing but your pinna. Then innermost canal is nothing but your external auditory canal, that is known as external auditory canal or external acoustic canal. Acoustic means anything which is related to the hearing. And then inside it you will observe a membrane which is separating your external and the middle ear, and that membrane is nothing but your tympanic membrane. It is just vibrating when the sound is colliding on it, that's why it's known as a tympanic membrane. Behind it you will observe three bones which are attached to each other in a chain fashion, and that's why they are known as ossicular chains or middle ear ossicles. Now why at all they are called as ossicles or the ossicular chain? Because they vibrate when the sound is traveling through it, so they're having a kind of the oscillatory movement in them. That's why they are called as middle ear ossicles or ossicular chain, because they're attached to each other in a chain fashion, in a series fashion. You will observe that a middle ear ossicle is attached to the portion of the inner ear also, and that connection is nothing but the connection of the foot plate of the stapes to the inner ear oval window. Okay, we'll see into it later on. Now further the eardrum you will have the middle ear, and further the middle ear you are having the inner ear. Okay, although you can also observe one tiny structure which is extending from the middle ear into something present down here. Okay, so we do not observe that what is exactly present down here because it is not visible in the diagram, but I will tell you what it is. So the eustachian tube, so this narrow tube which is connecting the middle ear cavity with something down here is known as the eustachian tube. And what the eustachian tube is connecting the middle ear with? It is connecting the middle ear with the nasopharynx, okay, so we will have the very clear diagrams of the eustachian tube connecting the middle ear with the nasopharynx later on in some while. Okay, So what are the functions of the ear? The basic function of the ear is hearing, no doubt, and then it is also performing the function of the balance and the equilibrium also. Okay, how it is performing these functions we will see in a while. Now, so this is till now what we have seen as a part of the revision. So ear is the sense organ for the balance and the equilibrium, also for the hearing. It is consist of the external ear, middle ear and the inner ear. The external ear consists of your pinna, external acoustic canal and the tympanic membrane. The middle ear consists of the middle ear ossicles, that is your malleus, incus and the stapes, and the inner ear consists of the bony and the membranous labyrinth. How it is looking like we will see in a while. Okay, let us just take your attention for a while. Okay, so the ear is present in the bony cavity of which bone? As I already told you the starting of this session, that the ear is consisting of very delicate structures and they need to be protected in a bony cavity. And what cavity it is? It is nothing but your temporal cavity. Yes. Okay, so this is how I got to know that you are paying all good attention. Okay, so after considering the external ear in a detail, we need ear consist of. So again going back, we started. So the external ear just a sort of panic membrane, the narrow septum which is separating your external and the exactly correct. Now, behind this tympanic membrane, if I cut open this tympanic membrane, I will enter into a cavity, and this narrow cavity is nothing but your middle ear cavity. Okay, this middle ear cavity, as you all can see, is having this bony structures, and this bony structures are attached to each other, right? In a chain fashion, in a series fashion, there is a continuity among them, right? So these bones are nothing but your middle ear ossicles, or they are also known as ossicular chain. And what are these three bones? These three bones, from lateral to the medial side, from outer to the innermost side, you will have three bones. These are malleus, incus and the stapes, right? Very correct. Now also it has the middle ear mucosa. The So it is made up of the mucosal membrane, and down there you will have the eustachian tube, right? That's it. The structure of the middle ear is this simple. Okay, but we need to consider some more details of the middle ear cavity. The middle ear cavity is a 6-walled bony cavity. Now how does it look like? So this is the upper wall, this is the medial wall, this is the lateral wall, this is the floor we will consider. Okay, and it has some front wall, anterior wall and the posterior wall also. So it has some 6-wall structure, as you can observe, right? So now the lateral wall, you can observe that it is made up of your tympanic membrane. Medial wall is in connection with your inner ear, right? The superior wall or the roof of the middle ear cavity is all the bone structure, and that bone is nothing but the temporal bone. I have seen many more. Then you are having some anterior wall and you are having the posterior wall. These are the walls of the middle ear. So it is like a square shaped cavity. This not it is exactly the square shape, but we can imagine it is a square which is consisting of the 6 wall. So outer side or the lateral side is the tympanic membrane. Inner side is your inner ear, round window and the oval window are there. Roof is formed by the temporal bone, and the cavity is consisting of 3 bones. These are known as the middle ear ossicles, which consist of the malleus, incus and the stapes. Now how at all you gonna remember this malleus, incus and the stapes? So for that the simple mnemonic is there, that is miss in middle ear. Malleus, incus, stapes, miss in middle ear. Now depending upon the shape of this middle ear ossicles, will and stirrup, because they look like stirrup. Okay, so this is how your envelope, that is your yes incus, and then you are also having the stirrup shape stapes. Okay, the stapes is attached to the inner ear and the malleus is attached to your tympanic membrane. Okay, one more diagram which is elaborating this middle ear ossicles. Malleus, yes, the malleus, the incus and the stapes. Okay, now the handle of the malleus is attached to the tympanic membrane because the malleus is present lateral most side, and the footplate of the stapes is attached to the oval window of the inner ear because it is the ocean. of the Milius is attached membrane. Very much clear, right? Of the tip is attached to your oval window of the inner ear, right? So these are the connections of your middle ear with the inner ear and the outer ear. Now, the functions of the middle ear. What is the function of the middle ear? Amplification of the sound and the impedance matching. Now, what are this amplification of the sound and impedance matching? Whatever the sound you are hearing at the pinna, which is receptible at the pinna, it is amplified and sent to your inner ear. Now, why it is happening? Because you will observe that the cross section of the area of the cross section at your tympanic membrane and at your oval window is considerably decreased, and that's why the sound is getting amplified while it is traveling towards the inner ear, and it is also doing the function of the impedance matching, right? Now we will further move towards the inner ear, its structure, its physiology, and the functions of the inner ear. Now moving again to the same diagram, as I have already told you that this is going to be the mainstay diagram, because once you revise and re-revise and understand the structures on the same diagram, they will fit very concretely into your brain. Okay, so again, a kind of the revision. Pinna is the external auditory canal or acoustic canal. Then you are having the tympanic membrane or the inner ear. Behind that, which you will find in the middle ear cavity, also the eustachian tube, and then you will find this inner ear. So very beautifully snail shaped structure which is present in inner ear, that is your comprising your inner ear. Now this inner ear doesn't look as simple as it is present. It is having actually two kind of labyrinth. One is a bony labyrinth and one is a membranous labyrinth. Now what is labyrinth? Labyrinth is nothing but another name for the inner ear. So whenever I'm saying inner ear, it is nothing but the labyrinth. Whenever I'm saying labyrinth, labyrinth is nothing but the inner ear. Okay, so I want you to imagine a closed field sac like structure, closed field sac like structure, inside where some fluid is present, and inside that outer sac there is also one inner sac. So there is outer sac, there is inner sac also. The outer sac is nothing but the bony labyrinth, the inner sac is nothing but your membranous labyrinth. Okay, the outer sac, as I told you, it is a closed filled sac, right? It is filled with what? It is filled with fluid. And what fluid it is? Perilymph is there, and there is endolymph also, right? So the one which is present outside, that is perilymph. The one which is present inside, that is your endolymph. Very simple and very logical, right? So the bony labyrinth is filled with the perilymph and membranous labyrinth is filled with the endolymph. Okay, now during the course of the development, this closed filled sac they take up, so initially the sacs were like this, and now they take up some different shapes, very interesting shapes, and now they become like different kind of the snail shape. A beautiful shape structure is produced, and that is nothing but your entire vestibular apparatus. Okay, vestibular and also the cochlear apparatus. Okay, so what happens here is that, so the inside sac was the membranous labyrinth, right? Now this membranous labyrinth gets various outpouchings and different shapes, and it is getting converted into three semicircular canals, then utricle and the saccule, and then it is also having the membranous cochlea. Okay, so what I told you is that the inside sac, the membranous labyrinth, is consisting of your semicircular canals, and you can observe there are three semicircular canals. The one which goes superior or anteriorly, that is your anterior or superior semicircular canal. The one which goes anteriorly, that is posterior semicircular canal. The one which go laterally, that is your lateral semicircular canal. So depending upon the directions they go, it is anterior or superior, posterior, and then lateral semicircular canal. All of these three semicircular canals, they eventually open into this utricle and the saccule. Okay, and then this utricle and saccule, they open inside your membranous cochlea. Okay, and so this is all comprising your membranous labyrinth. Now I told you that there are two outpouchings, or there are two sac-like structures, right? So the membranous labyrinth is converted into the semicircular canals, the utricle, saccule, and the membranous cochlea. We have seen that all. Okay, Now, surrounding this all of the membranous labyrinth, the protection portion also develops simultaneously. And then you will observe that this bony configuration around this membranous thing is nothing but your bony labyrinth. Okay, so this is the bony labyrinth, which is exactly mimicking the shape around your membranous labyrinth. Okay, so these are nothing but again three semicircular canals are also there. The protection which is present around the utricle and the saccule, it is called as vestibule. And then you will observe that around this membranous cochlea you will observe the bony cochlea. Now unless and until it is mentioned that it is membranous or the bony cochlea, the cochlea always means the bony cochlea. Now, so the membranous labyrinth consists of the semicircular canals, utricle and the saccule, and then we are having the scala media or the membranous cochlea. Okay. Now, and the bony cochlea, sorry, the bony labyrinth, it consists of the three semicircular canal again, which is mimicking around the membranous labyrinth, superior, posterior, and the lateral semicircular canal. We are having the vestibule around the utricle and the saccule, and the cochlea, it is divided into the scala vestibuli and scala tympani by your membranous cochlea. Okay, this portion comes in detail in the physiology of the hearing, which we will see in the later lectures. Okay, so as you can observe, again the same thing, there are three semicircular canal. Inside portion is the membranous labyrinth, and outside is the bony labyrinth, utricle and saccule, and then the scala media, and the outside portion is nothing but the bony labyrinth, that is scala. Again the same diagram you will observe. Just for the revision, we are having the vestibular apparatus and we are having the cochlear apparatus here. We are having the three semicircular canals, and then we are having the portion of the cochlea also over here. Now you can observe the sound is coming from the external ear. It is vibrating the tympanic membrane. Through the tympanic membrane it will go to the handle of the malleus. Now malleus, incus and the stapes, through the three ossicles, it will vibrate the footplate of the stapes, and then it will enter inside your scala media. Okay, through your scala tympani. Now, so the discussion of the ear is not completed without discussing this, what we call as the eustachian tube. Okay, so before understanding the eustachian tube, we will deal with a very simple case. So a person came to you with the complaint of the sore throat. Okay, and the next day the person is also having the pain into the ear. Now you are all wondering that how the infection from the throat has all over gone to the ear, how this infection has gone, right? So the infection from the throat or your pharynx has gone into the ear, it means that there has to be some connection, some sort of connection from throat to the ear. Okay, and what this connection is, this connection is nothing but your eustachian tube. So when I was explaining you the middle ear anatomy, I was also explaining you that the tube is extending from the middle ear cavity to the pharynx, right? Okay, so this tube is nothing but your eustachian tube, which is extending from your middle ear, and it is opening inside. The other opening is into the nasopharynx. Okay, it's a very narrow tube. It's also called as the auditory tube, or it is also called as a pharyngotympanic tube. Now pharyngo mane nasopharynx and tympanic mane middle ear, because the middle ear cavity is also called as tympanum. So the pharyngotympanic tube is nothing but your eustachian tube. It's about 36 mm long and it is opening into the nasopharynx, we have all seen. Okay, what is the function of this eustachian tube? It is equalizing the pressure on either sides of the tympanic membrane. It is also ventilating your middle ear ossicles, and it is also draining the secretions of the middle ear. How it is performing these functions, let us understand with this our favorite diagram again. So we are having the eustachian tube over here, right? This eustachian tube is connecting your middle ear with your nasopharynx. Very much clear, right? Now what functions eustachian tube is performing? The air is coming from the outer ear on this side of the tympanic membrane. Okay, because this is the open connection to the environment, so the air can come from outside and it can vibrate the tympanic membrane. That's how we are hearing the sound, right? Also, the air from the pharynx can come into the middle ear cavity through the eustachian tube, right? Okay, so air is coming from this side, the air is coming from this side also. So because there is connection of the eustachian tube, because the connection of the eustachian tube, you will observe that the pressure on either sides of the tympanic membrane is kept equal. The pressure on either sides of the tympanic membrane is maintained, so that the tympanic membrane, it remains stout, it remains stable at its own position. That's why it can vibrate properly, and there is no longer collapse or retraction of your tympanic membrane. Okay. Now, also what happens is that the air is coming from the eustachian tube, and then it can ventilate your middle ear ossicles. Yes, correctly. So something from the nasopharynx can go inside the middle ear cavity. It means that something from the middle ear can also come down, right? So what is coming down? That is nothing but the secretions of your middle ear. So these are the three important functions, that is equalizing the pressure on either sides of the tympanic membrane, ventilating this middle ear ossicles, and draining the secretions of your middle ear. Very much simple, right? Okay. So now, what is the the logic behind that? Initially we discussed the case that there was a patient with a sore throat, and next day the person also develops the pain in the ear. The same logic is applied here. Once you understand the structure, that it is connecting the pharynx, it is connecting the nasopharynx with the middle ear cavity, so that infections from the pharynx can easily freely go into the middle ear. Okay. So the logic behind person having the sore throat initially, and then next the pain into the ear, is because the infection has been transferred from your pharynx to the middle ear cavity through your eustachian tube. Now the question arises that this eustachian tube is transferring the infection from the pharynx into the middle ear cavity. So why we are keeping it open? Let's just block this tube. So once we block this tube, then what will happen? No longer the infection will go into the middle ear. The person can be saved, right, from getting pain into the ear. But once we block this tube, what will happen is that now the air is coming from only one side, there is no longer compensating air from the other side. So the pressure on the middle ear will increase, sorry, pressure on the tympanic membrane will increase, and the tympanic membrane will be retracted, and the person will no longer be hear properly. So there will be hearing loss. Okay. So we cannot block the eustachian tube. That is the clinical significance of the eustachian tube. Any blockade or any tumor in the eustachian tube can cause the retraction of your tympanic membrane. Moreover, it was also draining the secretions of the middle ear, right? Now the secretions will start to accumulate inside the middle ear itself, right? And it will lead to various middle ear pathologies also. Understand? So we cannot block this eustachian tube also. So these are the clinical aspects we need to consider about the eustachian tube. Infections can go, but we cannot block this tube, or anyway if it is blocked by some infection or tumor, then it can lead to the retraction of the tympanic membrane and various pathologies of the middle ear. Okay. So this all together concludes the ear and the basic structures of the ear. If you have any doubts regarding the ear, you can always come back to me. Thank you.